Here is everything you need to know about what is going on with Sean P. Diddy Combs. As you know, federal agents raided 3 of his properties because he has had 5 lawsuits against him since November, accusing him of trafficking, sexual assault, and a ton of other criminal activities. He, of course, denies it. Let's get into it. This all started on November 16th of 2023 when Puff Daddy's ex, Cassandra Ventura, filed a civil suit against him, alleging that he had physically and sexually abused her. So the 2 of them dated from 2007 until 2018. Normally, she wouldn't have been able to do anything about this because of the time that has gone by, but under New York's Adult Survivors Act, there was a 1-year window where she could file charges, and she did. In her lawsuit, she alleged that P. Diddy had forced himself sexually on her, beat her in fits of uncontrollable rage, and exerted a tight hold over all aspects of her life. She also stated that he would make her perform sex acts with other men that he called freak-offs, and she said it would usually be sex workers that he paid to travel around with them, and he would watch. So like I said, her lawsuit was filed on November 16th. P. Diddy settled it on November 17th, the very next day. Joy Dickerson Neal was the next person to file a lawsuit. She filed on November 23rd, 1 day before the Adult Survivors Act expired, and she said she was inspired by P. Diddy's ex filing first. In Joy's filing, she alleges that P. Diddy drugged her and then took her to the place where he was staying. She says she physically and mentally was in no condition to fight anyone off, and he ended up sexually assaulting her. She also claims that a male friend told her that Puff Daddy taped the whole thing and then showed a bunch of friends the video footage after. The 3rd case was filed the very next day on November 24th, and this was the last day of New York's Adult Survivors Act. And in this filing, it alleges that he sexually assaulted a 16-year-old. The victim alleged that this took place in 1990 or 91. She says that she met Puff Daddy and R&B singer Aaron Hall at an event in Manhattan. She says when the event ended, they convinced her to head back to Aaron Hall's apartment, where she says the 2 of them fed her drinks all night. She claims that P. Diddy coerced her into having sex with him, and soon after they finished, Hall burst into the room, pinned her down, and ended up sexually assaulting her. The next lawsuit was filed just a month later in December of 2023. This victim says that the incident took place in 2003 when she was only 17 years old and Combs was 34. She claims that she met Combs and the former president of his record label, Harvey Pierre, at a lounge in Detroit, and they somehow convinced her to travel on his private jet to New York when she was 17 years old. She says before they even left the lounge, Pierre smoked some sort of drugs and ended up making her perform a sex act on him. She says that once they landed in New York, they ended up taking her to a studio and feeding her copious amounts of alcohol and drugs. She said that there was another man there, and all 3 of them took turns taking her into the washroom and forcing themselves on her. She said they left her on the bathroom floor, and eventually she was flown back to Michigan. Now, the last suit was just filed this past February by this man, Rodney Jones. He's otherwise known as Little Rod. He was actually a producer on Sean Combs' latest album. He also lived and traveled with P. Diddy from September of 2022 until November of 2023. Now, this man had a lot of accusations to place on Sean Combs. It started with accusing him of sexually harassing him. He also said that he was pressured to engage in sexual acts, forced to procure sex workers for Combs, and witnessed Combs giving drinks laced with drugs to people at various parties. He's also stated that Sean Combs asked him to record everything. So in his filing, there are screenshots of actual video footage that he took at parties and things like that with underage girls and sex workers. He's also stated that he and Brendan Paul had been made to carry drugs and firearms for P. Diddy. This is 25-year-old Brendan Paul. He was arrested and charged with possession on the day that Diddy's properties were raided. As you know, Diddy had a scheduled trip to the Bahamas, and Brendan Paul happened to be with him at the Miami airport. Now, there has been another lawsuit just filed this past April, but it's not against P. Diddy. It's actually against his son, Christian Combs, otherwise known as King. Now, the woman who filed says this took place on a yacht that P. Diddy had chartered and his son was on. She says it took place in December of 2022, and she has presented evidence that is recordings of her refusing his advances, and someone has it on tape. So that's what we know so far. I will definitely be following this case, so make sure you hit follow.